When people feel safe, when they feel cared for, they begin to care for others, which means I want to make sure I do my role well. 75% of people are disengaged in what they're doing. And so the accountability here is to each other. And that is a powerful motivator, because when you look at people rather than numbers or your boss, you want to perform for them as opposed to some shareholder investor group out there. All I can say to you is we don't have leaders, we have managers, bosses, supervisors. This world desperately needs leaders who have human skills connected with their academic skills, and they need to see people as their purpose.
Welcome to LeaderSHOP, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. LeaderSHOP is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to LeaderSHOP, where we explore ideas, insights, and practices that enable leaders to help people thrive. And remember, for free resources to help you in your leadership journey, go to leadershop.net. That's leadershop.net. For this episode, I'm happy to welcome Bob Chapman. More than 5 years ago, I interviewed Bob for my Forbes column. Now I'm circling back so our podcast listeners can benefit from the wise counsel that this man can offer. Bob has spent the past several decades leading a company called Barry-Wehmiller. It started as a humble Midwestern manufacturing company, but has blossomed into a $3.6 billion capital equipment and engineering services firm that combines more than 145 acquired companies across 10 operating divisions worldwide. Today, the company has some 12,000 team members at 100-plus locations in 30 countries. The foundation of this amazing success story is something called the truly human leadership philosophy that rejects things like routine layoffs and rigid hierarchies. The result? Stronger trust, higher engagement, enduring loyalty, and exponential growth. Bob writes about this in his book titled Everybody Matters: The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. Bob Chapman, welcome to LeaderSHOP.
I appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue begin and share this message with the world.
I look forward to it. Let me ask, when did you first realize that traditional management practices were failing people?
The answer to that question is I never realized it was failing. I had a revelation because the way in my undergraduate in accounting, my MBA, my work at Pricewaterhouse, what I was taught and what I experienced is I saw people as functions for my success. And the success is growth in share value, organic market share, et cetera, all the metrics we use to judge a business as being successful. And that I was doing well, transforming our $20 million old business into a, let's say, $4 billion global business. But about 20 years ago at a wedding, when I was watching the father walk his precious daughter down the aisle, and everybody was so in awe of how precious she was, a young man, I had a revelation. And all of a sudden I said, all 12,000 of our team members are not engineers, accountants, union, workforce, receptionists. There's somebody's precious child who's been placed in my care for 40 hours a week, and that the way I will treat them will profoundly affect their life. That revelation, so we didn't have a problem. We had a realization, of a higher calling, the way to treat people with respect and dignity. And so that revelation began to shape the way we looked at our stewardship of the 12,000 lives that we have the privilege of leading.
So how would you define truly human leadership in just a sentence or two? What's that about?
I'm going to contrast it because you use the word management. My hope is eventually the word management is never used again, okay?
Right.
Because to me, in my 50 years of experience as CEO, the word management means the manipulation of others for your success. Leadership is the stewardship of the lives you have the privilege of leading. It's a totally different view. And I'll add here because I think it's significant. I was interviewed by Washington University organizational development professors for an hour and a half. And after an hour and a half, they said to me, "You're the first CEO we have ever interviewed that never talked about your product." And I paused a minute and I said, "I've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It's our people."
Yeah.
I won't go to my grave proud of the machinery we built. I'll go to my grave proud of the people who did that. I caught them completely off guard. So my whole view was transformed of the profound responsibility of leadership.
Somehow it reminds me of an experience my friend Stephen M.R. Covey had. He was fly fishing, and he had a guide with him teaching him how to fly fish. And the guide said, "Throw your hook right over here. That's where the fish are." And Stephen said, "Well, I can't see them at all. I don't see anything." And the guide said, "Put on your polarized sunglasses." And he did, and he could see a school of fish. So they were there. So that's kind of the experience you had. The situation was there. You came to see it through a different lens.
Exactly.
That changed your behavior. Your perception changed your behavior. So
Yeah.
What misconceptions do leaders often have about employee engagement?
Remember the statistics, which I quote that nobody debates. Remember, we live in a country that has great prosperity, economic prosperity. But as Tom Friedman said, we have a poverty of dignity because 88% of all people feel they work for an organization that does not care about them. 88%. And so, there's a 20% increase in heart attacks on Monday mornings when people go to work. So despite economic prosperity, we don't have human prosperity. And so that's the issue that we have seen. I always thought if I needed you to join my company, I had to pay you fairly with benefits and to give you the company. But it was just a transactional relationship. And if I needed to lay you off to cut costs, I did it. It was just, you kind of inhuman way we look at the people we have the privilege of leading as functions rather than somebody's precious child. So that, again, you're right. That reversal of my lens, when you see the way we see people affects the way we treat people. Okay. If we see them as engineers, accountants, labor, we will treat them accordingly. So trying to reverse the lens that management gives us to leadership, which is like parenting, the stewardship of the lives you have the privilege of leading.
Yes, you've used the word stewardship a couple of times, and that's I believe, key to all of this. So, Bob, what surprised you most about, or when you began to implement a more people-centered leadership practice? What surprises did you have?
The biggest surprise, so I'm glad you asked that, because the biggest surprise by far was I thought the way I impact your life is with a salary and benefits. Never occurred to me. I never heard, never read, never studied, was never taught that the way I'd run this company would affect people's marriage and their relationship with their children and their health. And the biggest surprise was when we began teaching how to become a truly human leader with human skills combined with academic skills. 95% of the feedback was how it affected their marriage and their relationship with their children. Okay. And so I would say to you, and it was startling to me. I mean, the stories I heard would make you cry in terms of when people spend 40 hours a week in a place where they don't feel valued, regardless of pay. They go home and they're probably not the best spouse, probably not the best parent. And we probably get what we see, which is a lot of anger and unrest in our country, despite economic prosperity.
Right. Well, if someone has a bad experience at work, they're going to take that feeling home with them.
Well, that's most people, okay? Most people kind of live in fear of being laid off or criticized because we have a society that is about numbers, not about humanity. So
right.
Again, the Industrial Revolution gave us economic prosperity, but it didn't give us human prosperity.
Well, and people spend at least during their career years, they spend most of their waking hours at work.
Yeah, that was my second revelation. When I was at church and I said, my wife, Cynthia, after the sermon, said, "Oh my God, Cynthia, our rector's only got us for 1 hour a week. We have people for 40 hours a week. We are 40 times more powerful to influence people's lives."
Right. You spend more time with your workmates than you do with your spouse.
Exactly. And yet we don't teach in our educational program these human skills so we can work together and enjoy the opportunity to be a part of a team and go home at night feeling valued.
Well, you've touched on this, but let's get more explicit. What role does listening play in shaping a workplace culture?
The perfect question. When we realized that we had been blessed with a vision of what leadership should be, and somebody asked me my greatest concern, I said, my greatest concern is that this blessing we have will die with me. It'll be too dependent upon me. So we decided to start a university to create disciples so that we all would believe this. We all could do this. And one of our team members, David Vondermolen, said, well, we need to teach empathetic listening. I said, why on earth do we need to teach adults to listen? It was just, it was beyond my comprehension. But good news, they overrode me, and they designed a 3-day class on empathetic listening. And I was in Minneapolis 2 months later, and a young lady in her 30s came up to me and said, Mr. Chapman, I just took your listening class at your university. I said, really, what was it like? I had no idea. She said, I now know how to raise my 2-year-old daughter.
Wow.
That went right to my heart.
Wow.
And I began flying around the country, sitting down with groups of people who took this listening class. And it was profound. The healing power. I thought when you cared for somebody, you went over to talk to them. It turns out if you care for somebody, you go over to listen to them without judgment, without interruption, to validate their worth. And it is the most powerful thing you can do to somebody that you care about, is to listen to them without judgment, to be present, to validate their worth. So that the foundation of truly human leadership is the skill of listening without judgment, simply to validate other people, which, as you look around our world right now, you don't see a lot of listening going on, do you?
No, you sure don't. You certainly do not. More people need to understand that good listening involves listening to learn rather than listening to rebut.
Exactly.
So how do you balance business performance with people-focused leadership? Your organization is bumping right up against being a $4 billion empire. How do you balance all of that business stuff with the people-focused leadership?
Harvard wrote a case study on our culture about 8-9 years ago, and I was invited up there the first day that they were introducing it to about 160 executives from around the world in for a special program. They debated our company for about an hour, and I was invited to sit in the audience. And Jan Rifkin, the professor, asked a question that I think is very important to the audience to hear. He said, is Barry-Wehmiller's success its culture or its business strategy? And they voted. 75% said it was our culture. And then Jan looked at me and said, Bob, do you want to comment? I never really thought about that, but I stood up and I said, I understand why you believe our culture is the foundation of our success. Because remember, our share price, which we use an economic value-added approach to, has gone up 12% a year, compounded for 25 years. So I would say to you, from a monetary standpoint, you say you're successful. But when I stood up there, I said, remember, my view is the foundation of our success is a robust business model that is designed around balance of markets, products, and technology that will allow us to go through these economic cycles we've experienced without hurting people. And that business model I designed from my challenges in the 80s. I designed this in 1988. My dream was to get from 20 million to 100 million. That business model got us to almost 4 billion today. It's around balance and focus on not being too concentrated in any one market. And that business model was tested in 08-09. We let nobody go, and our share price went up 11% when major corporations' share price dropped. So I would say to you, the engine for our success, the foundation of our success, is a well-designed business model. I don't hear many people talking about that because I never was taught about business model, but our business model, which is very well thought out from my experiences and my learnings from others, we designed in 88, is the foundation. And the fuel for that engine, the premium fuel that allows that engine to perform, is our culture. You can't just take premium fuel and put it in Toyota and think you're going to race a Ferrari. Your first responsibility as a CEO is to make sure you have a business model that is robust, that will serve your stakeholders' expectation. And then, of course, you got to have a culture that allows that business model to perform. Remember, if 88% of it, remember, I think it's 3 out of 4 people, according to Gallup, are disengaged in what they're doing. So when our companies look around right now to their team members, 3 out of 4 people are doing what they need to do to get by, okay? They're not putting their passion, their heart and soul into this. So again, the foundation of what we have achieved, which astounds me, is our business model designed around diversity of markets, staying in our lane, doing what we did with good diversity, and then a culture that activates that business model. And that's what's created this tremendous growth in both earnings, revenue, and culture.
Somehow, as you talk, I'm thinking of a fellow who told me years ago, we were examining the culture in his organization. He said, I've been here for 12 years and I really don't like it, but only 8 more years I can retire. And I'm thinking, what a way to exist. And now, based on what you said earlier, I wonder if he was one of those people who had a heart attack on Monday morning when he had to go back to the workplace.
Yeah, so remember, we live in a country where we have TGIF. Thank God it's Friday.
Yeah.
This place. My dream, as you will see at the end of this conversation, is that we end up with a TGIM. Thank goodness it's Monday. Get away from the kids and spouse and be at a place where I really enjoy working with people.
Yeah. So, Bob, when transforming a culture, what are the first steps that leaders should take?
I get that question a lot. When I did a TED, Simon Sinek invited me to do a TED Talk a little over 10 years ago, and they animated it. So our message from the 20-minute TED Talk was animated to 10 minutes. And I'd recommend to anybody, just go to the internet, look up my TED Talk. There's an animated version on YouTube, and just see how this resonates with your purpose. Make sure that you believe what we believe, okay? And then the book that we just published, the 10th anniversary edition, is really my journey from management to leadership. And then how do you create a truly innovative leadership culture? And then the new edition talks about the impact. I don't know how somebody could read that and not want to add for the people that they have the privilege of leading. So again, you can take steps. And then we have our Chapman Leadership Institute. We're helping major corporations learn how to care for the people they have the privilege of leading, teaching these human skills. And again, I think I gave 280 speeches in the last 4 or 5 years around the world, from the United Nations to major corporations. And in every part of remember, I speak in nonprofits and hospitals, the military, government. Every sector has the same issue. We don't have leaders. We have managers, supervisors, bosses, superintendents, principals. We don't have leaders who see their people as their purpose. So again, nobody has ever debated, not Harvard, nobody at Harvard, McKinsey, what I just said to you. It's just, I don't know how to go from using people to caring for people. That's a bridge they don't know how to get across. And that's the journey our book takes them on. And it is the most meaningful journey you could possibly go on, because the feedback you will get from people about what it feels like to be cared for, the way they treated their son now because they've learned to listen instead. So again, so much of the feedback we get is about the impact on their personal life. And the other piece is that when people embrace this, the attractiveness of talent, we are attracting talent all over the world to our company because people want to be a part of an organization like this. So again, it's a journey, and you can go through that journey by the TED Talk, the book, our Leadership Institute. You can take any steps you want. All I can say to you, this is what we desperately need in this country to heal this poverty of dignity we have.
So when you first started to emphasize this wonderful philosophy, surely in your organization you had somebody who was not a true believer. They had been reared in an atmosphere that was not compatible with this viewpoint. How did you work with people who had that frame of reference?
Well, Simon Sinek just did an interview of a gentleman like that who worked in our plant in Phillips. He, military background, just leave me alone. I don't care about these things. And over time, he joined the movement as now a professor at our university, a guy named Randall Fleming, an amazing story. What we have is what Bill Urey of Harvard calls courageous patience. The bus drives up, says, do you want to join this movement? And the individual says, you know what? From my experience, I'm just not ready. He said, that's okay, we'll be back. Bus comes around the circuit. We open the door again. So we focus on the people that do get it. We hold them up. And it's amazing how others join that movement in time when they're ready, when they believe it's not just the flavor of the month.
Right.
Because it's hard not to join it. Is again, Simon Sinek we've had people interview people randomly around our company, and they said they have never seen anything like it in their life. How could this manufacturing company, we operate around the world, it's the same issue around the world. How could it be that we got something that everybody says they've never seen anything like? Because that lens we changed, and B, then we started teaching human skills at our university, and it is unbelievably gratifying. There's a gentleman that runs a major organization in this country who heard me speak at a major church, and he came up to me afterwards and said, I thought my job was to build the world's market leader in our industry, which I did. It never occurred to me to care for the 100,000 people who work in this organization. You have given me a whole new purpose. The issue is that in our education, we're taught it's a numeric culture we live in, measured by data, okay? We need to blend the numeric with the human, okay? And when you do, it is unbelievably gratifying. The feedback you will get, the lives you touch, the healing power, sending people home each day knowing that who they are and what they do matters is profoundly meaningful.
Well, I've seen organizations that try to do what you're doing. They might not use all the same nomenclature, although some of it they do. They talk about stewardship, et cetera. But when they start to transform their culture into the kind of people-centered situation that you're describing, I've seen people say, I was scheduled to retire 18 months from now, and I was looking forward to it. I don't want to leave now. For the first time in my career, I'm enjoying my work. And it's sort of like what you said earlier. They look forward to coming to work on Monday.
I have Zoom meetings with people all over the world who've taken our classes. You cannot believe the feedback from Italy to Serbia to China to India. It's a universal feedback. Again, the key issue is people simply want to know they matter. But what we're taught is pay them a fair compensation and benefits and attract them to your company, and then do engagement surveys. We don't teach in our business schools people to be leaders. We teach them to be managers to achieve numbers. You're not promoted because you're good to the people. You're promoted because you achieve results, okay?
Right.
And if you're really successful, you can write checks to charity and everybody will say you're a wonderful person despite the way you treated the people in your organization.
Right, exactly.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings. But for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, he knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
So within a people-first culture, what does accountability look like?
Accountability is more powerful. I'll use the example. About 5 or 6 years ago, a high school football coach read my first book, wanted to meet with me up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I met with him. His name is Steve Jones. And I said, at the end of this conversation, I said, Steve, the only problem I have with sports, we have winners and we have losers, okay? How do you coach young men, in this case football, about winning and losing? He said, we don't. We teach them play your position well for your fellow team members. And they won 72 games in a row and 5 out of 6 champions, okay? And I thought, the way I was taught, the way I expressed the world, it was always about my career. I wanted to make sure I did well for my advancement. It never occurred to me to play my position well in the organization so that Bill and Mary sitting next to me have a future. And I think that is a powerful thought process. So we do it for each other, okay? But if you have an organization, which most people do, where people don't feel safe or cared for, they just try to protect their jobs so they don't get hit with the next layoff.
Right.
And so when people feel safe, which they do in our company, when they feel cared for, they begin to care for others, which means I want to make sure I do my role, and which I think is accountability. I want to make sure I do my role well. And again, in terms of accountability, you're holding people accountable to a low standard because people are disengaged in what they're doing. Okay, 75% of people are disengaged in what they're doing. And so the accountability here is to each other, okay? And that is a powerful motivator because when you look at people rather than numbers or your boss, you want to perform for them as opposed to some shareholder investor group out there. All I can say to you is our performance is exceptional and we attract unbelievable talent, and the feedback we get is beyond words in terms of what it means to people to be cared for and go home at night knowing that who they are and what they do matters. We've been doing this 22 years. It's not a short-term experiment,
Right.
And we're doing it all over the world. The feedback is identical all over the world. Even when you're talking to hospitals or you're talking to nonprofits, you're talking to the military. Every place I speak, we have the same issue. We don't have leaders. We have managers, bosses, supervisors. And what this world desperately needs is leaders who have human skills connected with their academic skills, and they need to see people as their purpose.
Well, in a people-first culture, as you well know, workers are inclined to do the right thing for the right reasons, even when nobody is watching.
Right.
They don't need anybody to hover over them.
Well, what is the word? You remind me. I use this in my talk. In college, I took management classes, got a management degree, and got a job in management. So I thought I was supposed to manage people, okay? Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. And I did. I managed people. But clearly, you can't manage anybody, okay? There's nobody you can manage. But you can. I was never taught to care, and I was never taught how to inspire people, okay? When will people give you fully their gifts? When they feel valued, when they feel inspired, when they feel cared for. I mean, again, all I can say to you is people from all over the world, McKinsey, Harvard, Stanford, have come into our organization and said, I have never seen anything like this. And we had no idea, this idea of just teaching. Remember, we created a university about 20 years ago, the idea of creating disciples so it wouldn't be dependent on me. And we decided to teach listening, which you mentioned, but also recognition and celebration. We spend a lot of time in our organization looking for the goodness in people and holding it up. Most organizations focus on the brokenness, just like the media. That guy got fired, that guy didn't. Right. So we have a cadence of recognition that is powerful. And it's not that a boy or 5 years service. It is feelings, behaviors, and impact. It's a skill to just like listening is a skill, recognizing others is a skill. And the other class that's powerful is service, seizing the opportunity to serve others, moving from a me-centric world to a we-centric world where we genuinely care for others, okay? But again, it's hard to care for others when you don't feel cared for yourself.
All of this makes so much good sense. And it is obviously so much better than just having a mission, vision, and value statement on a poster in the employee cafeteria. I mean,
remember, these are not bad people. Remember when Bernie Sanders was a possible presidential candidate, he talked a lot about socialism. And surveys show young people actually show some interest in socialism. So the CEO Roundtable, America's top 200 CEOs, I know a number of them, they're incredibly fine people. They came out with a full-page ad that said, we need to think about more than just the shareholders. A, it's sad they needed to say that, okay?
Yeah,
and
right.
B, I know these people. They have no idea how to care. They're not rewarded for caring. Their board does not discuss caring for their people. So it was a beautiful statement, but it lacked substance because we don't teach people. We don't reward or teach people to care. So we have a society where we are actually self-destructing for economic gain, thinking that money creates happiness, and it doesn't.
So, Bob, what transformations have you seen in the lives of employees outside of work? What's going on in their home life, in their communities?
Well, they are bringing this message. I mean, we have people in our organization that take these human skills that we teach, and they're actually bringing them to their church to teach people how to care. They're actually bringing them to the community. So it's so powerful that our team members are bringing this to organizations and schools. We are actually now working with K through 12, because I said to myself one day, why do we need to fix adults? Why is there even a need for us to fix adults? Because our education system gives us academic skills, but it doesn't give us human skills, okay? And so bringing this to the educational system is incredibly meaningful, and our team members are engaged in it. So we're working through K to 12, and we're working with business schools and universities. So we have a very active program to impact education, to create tomorrow's leaders who will have the skills and courage to care. And so again, our team members, they talk to their friends, they talk to their family. You know, the greatest compliment somebody gives me is after a speech, they'll come up and say, my daughter's graduating from college. Is there any way that she could apply for a job in this company? Because this is the place I want my daughter. So, you know, again, we've been doing this transformation occurred, started in 1997, and it is the most meaningful journey I've ever been on in my life, because to see the way we impact lives, again, in every part of the world, is healing. We need a healing message. Business could be a powerful force for good if we had leaders who saw the people as their purpose, okay? We need an economic engine to create value for people, but we desperately need, and your voice is one that can awaken people to this desperate need we have. I mean, remember, we have the highest level of prosperity in our history, and we have the highest level of depression, anxiety, and suicide. We have people that don't want to go to work. Why would you want to go to work for a company when your dad came home or your mom came home miserable every day, hardly wait to retire? We wonder why young people don't want to go into organization. They watch their parents miserable.
Yeah.
So the statistics, I mean, 65% of all people would say they would give up a salary increase if they could fire their boss. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't need to convince anybody with data. The data is there. And then when you see people come into our organization and they see what they see, the only reason we wrote the book we did is because a gentleman named Srikar Marrao said to us one day after he visited our operation, Bob, you have got to share this with the world. I have never seen anything like this in my life. And so we feel we have been blessed with a vision of what business could be in the world if we had leaders who saw the people they have the privilege of serving as their purpose, not simply the shareholders.
So in an organization that is adopting this philosophy, how can leaders influence change when they are not at the top of the organization? They're in the middle somewhere. How can they help influence this transformation in an organization?
Well, they can go through the same journey, which I mentioned, watch that animated TED Talk. They can then decide to read the book, because everybody in the organization is a potential leader. You can run the accounting department and you can change. It's just a matter of how do we get the people to change their lens, to see the people they have the privilege of leading and treat them with respect and dignity. I did give a speech to a major organization that was a $20 billion division of a $100 billion company. And after my speech, a gentleman said, Mr. Chapman, what do we do if corporate doesn't support this? Okay. And I said, well, so he wasn't low in the organization, but he still felt he had a governance issue with it. And I said, what do you need from corporate? A memo that we're going to care? You know, you don't need permission to care. Okay. And so I would say to you, everybody in the company can change the lens in which they see people. Start trying to focus, learn from the book, learn from the TED Talks. All my messages are on the internet. Do your people feel valued? Are you listening to them? So you can begin anywhere in the organization. Leaders are everywhere. Find them, encourage them. And so I would say to you that I get that question. I even got that question from a gentleman who was chairman of a major corporation in the world and CEO, because even he was concerned about his board. Well, how do I talk to my board? So even at the highest level, we're worried. And then the board's going to worry, what about the shareholders who simply want? We have a a sad world right now because I won't name the company, but a major software company announced they're going to lay off, I think it was 10 or 20,000 people.
Right.
And the next day, their share price went up dramatically. The market rewarded them for hurting 10,000 people. It should have gone down, okay? Why would companies announce they're going to hurt 10,000 people, okay? Because, we're going to make more money. We're going to make more money. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a broken system. And why would you want your child or your grandchild or your best friend's child to go into the work environment when there's an 88% chance they're not going to be valued, okay? And it's going to affect their health and the relationships at home.
Well, tell us a little bit about your company's hiring practices. When you're interviewing a prospective employee, what are you looking for so that you can be comfortable that that individual will be comfortable in your culture?
Good question. We have a lot of faith in the goodness of people. We have seen a lot of people transform. Some of the people who are our best professors right now, I wouldn't have hired because they were in a bad place. And so I would say to you, again, we practice courageous patience, but we do distribute because my message is all over the internet. We do distribute our philosophy and talk and engage in a conversation and see how they feel about it, looking as best we can for any signs that this will be an issue. So we try to avoid it. We're not perfect. But at a senior level, we have an organization within our company called Leadership Alliance where we do leadership testing and case studies. Because when we make a mistake in the leadership level, we hurt a lot of people. So I would say to you, our recruiting team, I think we hired well over 1,000 people last year in our company around the world. And I speak to what we call new team members globally on Zoom. And they all say the culture was a key. And they said, I read about it. It seemed too good to be true. And I've been here 3 months, and it's actually been better than I thought. A young lady in Phillips, Wisconsin, was sitting there, and she said, Mr. Chapman, I've been here 6 months. I'm a single mother with 2 kids. I took your listening class already. And she said, I now realize I'm not a good mother. I mean, this is a brand new team member. Because when you learn to listen, it changes everything. So I would say our recruiting process, even when the talent market is tough, we get a tremendous, I think 100,000 people annually express interest in joining our company, 100,000 people annually.
Sounds like you're hiring 1 out of 100 if you hired about 1,000.
Yeah, well, it's, and the recruiters say our culture is a key to recruiting. So
sure.
But again, courageous patience, we believe in the goodness of people, and we want to give people an opportunity because most people have been pretty much abused. I mean, major companies, when they announce layoffs, sometimes deactivate your badge. You don't even know you're laid off until you walk up to the door and your badge doesn't work anymore. Sometimes you get an email at midnight that says you no longer have a job.
Yeah.
And so it's the brutality in business, even in all parts of our society, the government, everybody, is horrible right now. So we look like an oasis to most people that apply for our company. So attracting talent is the easiest thing we do because people want to work for a company that cares about them.
Sure. So what generational differences have you seen in how people respond to this approach? I assume that in your organization you have 3 or at least 3 or maybe 4 generations. What differences do you see in how they respond to this?
I don't see any difference. So
people are people.
Yeah. In our consulting company where we have about 1,600 engineers, technical people who consult with major companies in terms of engineering, the average age is probably 30, okay? Very young people. And they're on these calls and their comments are just unbelievably positive about our culture in our consulting company. Our company in Serbia, the average age, we have 400 people in our big plant in Serbia making tissue equipment. And the average age is 31. So, and yet most of our companies have been around a long time, and our tissue equipment, our corrugating equipment, the average age is probably 50. I have never had anybody notice a difference. And on these listening sessions, we get somebody who's 62 and we get somebody who's 22. The interesting thing, young people, this is probably the most meaningful. I've had a number of young people say, when I joined the company, I was a little afraid to make a mistake because I knew when I was going to make a mistake. But people were so nice to me. They said, that's okay. That's how you learn. And I was just amazed because people feel safe, okay? People feel cared for. And when they feel safe and cared for, they bring that to other people. You know, again, bad news about COVID, it was highly contagious. The good news about caring, it's even more contagious than COVID.
That's a great metaphor, and it's absolutely true. Well, one final question, Bob. What societal problems could be addressed if the truly human leadership philosophy were widely adopted?
I think the foundation of truly human leadership is to embrace human skills. If our society, and again, we're working on exactly what you said in our foundation, in our Leadership Institute, we are trying to solve a societal problem where we have the highest level of anxiety and depression and suicide we've ever had. Young people, old people, it is sad to me to see the destruction of human value while we're trying to create economic value, okay? And again, this year's a good year. We have stock markets at record levels, and we have going to have the highest level of layoffs we've had in years, okay?
But not in your company.
No, not in our company, but just read every day. I just read that. So I would say the societal issue is we have a society where we don't know how to care for each other. And caring starts with being able to listen without judgment. I think you'll like this. There's a gentleman named Bill Urey, World Peace Negotiator at Harvard, wrote a book called Getting to Yes.
Yes.
Famous gentleman. Simon Sinek said, Bill, you got to come in and see this company. So Bill Urey came in and spent 2 days in our company talking to our people. And what he said was profound. He sat down with me and he said, Bob, I saw the answer to world peace in your company. I said, Bill, how do you go to a manufacturing company and see the answer to world peace? He said, I saw a place where people genuinely care for each other. Then he added, which was equally powerful, when you think of Ukraine and Russia and China and Palestine and the cultural issues we have, he said, I now realize I've been going to global peace talks for 30 years. And that's exactly what they are. They're global peace talks. The problem is nobody knows how to listen. Because in our schools, we teach people how to speak,
right,
how to express yourself, and how to debate to win. Okay, we win debates. It doesn't mean you're right. It just means you won the debate. But guess what we don't teach in our schools? We don't teach people to listen, which is the most powerful human skill on this earth. So the societal issue is we have a very me-centric world, and we need a we-centric world, but we need to learn to care for others. It's hard to care for others when you don't feel cared for yourself. So learning to listen, which is the foundation of caring, looking at people as somebody's precious child, we could solve so many of the issues that we face in every part of our society. So there's no question that we have been blessed with a vision of what the world was meant to be, where people genuinely care for each other.
Well, Bob Chapman, thank you so much for joining us on LeaderSHOP. Bob has reminded us that leadership is fundamentally about the stewardship of human lives. Every interaction, every decision, every moment of attention we provide as leaders either affirms someone's worth or diminishes it. I'm impressed by the manifesto at Barry-Wehmiller. Here's what it says. Everyone wants to do better. Trust them. Leaders are everywhere. Find them. People achieve good things, big and small, every day. Celebrate them. Some people wish things were different. Listen to them. Everybody matters. Show them. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your team, your network, or anyone else who's ready to make better use of their time and attention. And be sure to leave a review. Even a single sentence fuels the algorithms that promote the great content that the LeaderSHOP podcast offers. And remember that for free resources, you can go to LeaderSHOP.net. That's LeaderSHOP.net. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For LeaderSHOP, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.